All right, ISO, what is it and why should you care about it? What's going on, guys? Andrew Murphy, and today we're going to be starting a 3-part series on something called the exposure triangle. We're basically going to be going through each individual element, which is ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, and we're going to be breaking it down. I'm going to help you understand exactly what each of the elements do and how they all link together, and basically how to help you get the perfectly exposed shot every single time and have it looking exactly how you want it. So one of the biggest things I actually find when people are starting out is they don't understand the relationship between aperture, ISO, and shutter speed and how they all work together in the exposure triangle. And they basically just start twisting dials and changing stuff and hope for the best, and they don't actually know what they're doing. So this series is to basically get you on the right track, understand exactly what each of these elements do, how you can use them creatively, how you can use them to your advantage, how you can help in weird environments, weird situations, and basically help you get perfect exposure every time in any environment and not have to just kind of like crank dials and hope for the best in weird situations. So basically how I learn is I like to understand exactly how something worked, and then I use that to my advantage to basically understand how something worked even better. So basically ISO is your camera sensor's sensitivity to light coming in through the lens. So a good analogy that I've found to help people understand ISO is compare it to a light bulb. So basically, as you crank down a light bulb, it's gonna get really, really dim and you're not gonna be able to see much in the room. So let's set that as basically ISO 100. And basically, as you crank up that light bulb, the room's gonna get brighter, you're gonna be able to see more. We can basically set that to say like ISO 10,000 say. And basically, as you crank that light bulb up, the room's gonna get brighter, you're gonna be able to see more. So let's compare that to, a higher ISO like 25,600 or 51,200. So basically, as you crank your ISO up, you're kind of like artificially adding in more light. So when it's really, really low, it's going to be less susceptible to light, to when it's really high, it's going to be highly susceptible to little amounts of light. And what you'll find is, say in night scenarios or really dim lit environments like a church for a wedding, you'll find that you're going to have to crank your ISO up quite high dependent on what kind of lens and setup you have. And all cameras aren't the same. So some, start at 100, some start at 200, some go down to 50, some Sonys can go up to, 500,000, 1 million ISO, which basically just means that they're really, really susceptible to low amounts of light, which is why you see some of the guys using Sony being able to shoot, pretty much on a full moon night, say, and be perfectly exposed. And they'll basically actually be able to expose with zero to minimal light because the ISO sensitivity is so high. The other reason I like to compare it to a light bulb is in terms of heat. So not so much now because they're LEDs and they don't really produce much heat at all. But if you think back in the day when you had a tungsten bulb or a halogen, basically, when it's really, really dim, it's not producing much heat. And basically, the more you crank it up, the brighter that light bulb gets, the hotter it's also gonna get and the more heat it's gonna produce. So it's actually very similar to the sensor in your camera as well. So basically, the higher you push your camera's ISO, the hotter the image is gonna get in terms of like noise, grain, hot pixels, that sort of stuff. You'll notice that the higher you push it, your image is going to start degrading. So in saying this, why would you want to change your ISO if you know that the higher it gets, the more it's going to degrade your image? And basically the answer to that question is in that some scenarios you are going to have no choice but to raise your ISO. So let's use a practical example and I'll show you just how you can use ISO in a real world situation. So we're shooting at night time and we've lowered our shutter speed as low as we possibly can. We've lowered our aperture as low as the lens will let us go, and our image still isn't exposed. So the only way left to increase the exposure of our image is to basically bring in some external lights or to up our ISO. So you can see by upping our ISO, the image is going to get incrementally brighter until it gets to the point where our image is correctly exposed. Then once we've set all this, we're ready to go and we can start shooting. Another thing to note is that ISO is generally the most changed setting on your camera to give that cinematic look with, the low shutter speed and your low aperture. And for me personally, when I'm shooting commercially, it's actually pretty much the only setting I actually change. So guys, I hope that helped you understand ISO a little bit better and gave you some practical examples of how you can actually implement this in real world situations, and gives you a deeper understanding of what ISO does, so the next time you're out shooting you can choose whether ISO is the right setting to change or not. And last but not least, remember that ISO is part of the exposure triangle, which means that if you are going to change your ISO, you're going to have to counteract that with either an aperture change or a shutter speed change to keep the image looking exactly as it was. Alright guys, that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more videos like this. And leave a comment below if this has helped you or if you'd like to see a new tutorial in the future. And until next time guys, happy filmmaking and I'll see you all very, very soon.